Now I've narrowed down on the focus, but I am going to take a step back so that you have grounding on the way that we think about information-based business, because it's really the driver behind what we're building and what I'm going to show today. A demo is really cool, but if you don't have context to why we're automating and injecting AI for metric management, I think this will probably make a lot of sense as we walk through this. So when I think of an information business or information-based business, I should say, something you've probably heard is data driven. It's another play on this concept of being data driven. The reality is most organizations are not as data driven as they think. If you were to bring me in and I did an analytics assessment or strategy assessment, I'm most likely going to tell you that you're not data driven. And that's a great starting point for, okay, in what areas are you actually data driven? And more importantly, how do you understand the relationships between your business and data together? And the reality is, as a starting point to become an information-based business and ultimately be aspirationally data driven, you do need to understand all of these relationships. So you have business topics, line of business, you have people, you have strategy, you have a whole bunch of data and analytics tools and technologies and assets, and then you have the measurements and metrics that you use to monitor what's happening, events, performance, and so on. So enterprises understand that these things exist, and you've made an investment to some extent to manage all these things. Well, the reality as is an enterprise is an organic, growing, and moving entity. These relationships are constantly changing. I'm obviously stating the obvious. However, as you probably experience, managing the change and the knowledge and what is happening over time is a very difficult task. Hence, why there's so many technologies and tools that exist for managing data, metadata, change, master data management, there's a whole suite and plethora of technology and process and best practice that you can spend forever reading about on LinkedIn. But when you boil it down, when you distill it down, this is the real struggle and problem. And so in my world of metric management, what we were, when I look at this specific problem around metric management and metadata management, I was really looking at how can we streamline this process? If I understand all these assets, and my goal is to make sure that I have clear, concise, and consistent way to manage all of these information assets, how do I streamline that? And then more importantly, if I build a way to organize and collect and manage our metrics and KPIs, how do I address the real world challenges of change? As an example, let's say that I have a metric, activations, and maybe you have a metric like that, activations. At Data Tools Pro, an activation is when anyone comes in, maybe you'll come in hopefully today, and sign up and log into Data Tools Pro. The first time you connect to your Salesforce instance, boom, we stamp an activation. Like that is the metric name, that is the definition, and that's a metric we track. Now, let's say you have the same metric in your organization. Over time, three things can happen. You could have somebody come in and implement activation using another system of record, maybe, and now your numbers don't match up. So you've got multiple ways of measuring the same metric. You could implement activation somewhere and discover that you have the same measurement that I just described, but you're calling it something else. Maybe you're calling it complete signups or something like that. So you're measuring the same thing, but you're calling it something different. And then the other change, the plethora of other changes that could happen. Maybe it's a formula field in Salesforce and somebody changes the formula, or somebody bulk uploads a bunch of data and it changes the historical metric definition. So there's a whole plethora of things that can happen over time that result in your metrics being incorrect. And I'm using air quotes so you can see it. And so once again, how that's one big problem. How do we capture and understand these changes over time?